welcome to worship. Are you tired of all the decisions these days? I can tell you, I am. Should we cancel the family vacation since it's unclear how thoroughly some have been socially distancing? Is it safe to get on a plane, to get a haircut, to have our teeth cleaned, to have a friend for dinner, even if just on the porch? Is it safe to go see a new grandchild? How do I feel about my daughter's school's decision regarding reopening? Should I really set my air conditioning to 78 degrees like Pico suggests? Really? In this humidity? I find these and so many decisions exhausting. Maybe you do too. But for now, let's leave them to the side and just enjoy the good decision to worship together this morning. Thanks for showing up. My name is Nancy Schongalla-Bowman, and on deck today is Bill Garrett sharing the message and communion with a slight modification. Bill Bloom is bringing us our music. Nancy Garrett has a moment for Mother Earth. And deep thanks, as always, to our fabulous tech team of Lexi, Sue, and Patricia. We're not aware of any birthdays this week. Hope we didn't miss you. And we hope you can stay for coffee hour immediately following the service, where we will share joys and concerns, which are, of course, not recorded, and also experience the welcome grounding of reconnecting and hearing from each other. Maybe you have a God moment to share from the week. We invite you to send any requests for support or prayer to Bill Garrett or the church office if you would like them included in the Tuesday Inspirations piece, which he puts together and sends out for all of us. I hope you take a look at those. They are really one of the highlights of my week in terms of inspiration. Now here is an announcement to help break up the logjam of helplessness, which we can so easily experience these days. We have come up with a plan related to the President's intention to defund the Postal Service. I don't know about you, but I'm already experiencing some impact from the reduced hours that they have, and our mail delivery service is so much later in the day, if it even happens some days. Anyway, the big concern is the absentee ballots, which might not get counted in time to be included in the election results in November. So please open an email from the church tomorrow morning, which will give instructions about calling Senator Toomey on this issue. And we have scheduled a Zoom meeting for those of us in the church who've responded to this invitation Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, just to talk about the contact we made and any next steps. Thanks so much to Dale for coordinating this. And now we welcome you, Nancy Garrett, and your moment for Mother Earth.
Hi, I'm Nancy Garrett, and I have the moment for Mother Earth. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about clothing and sustainable clothing. I did a little research because I wanted to find out how best to buy clothes and deal with clothes and the environment. And my research took me to a website called sustainyourstyle.org. And the first thing that I saw when I read this website was the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world after the oil industry. That really surprised me. But then as I read more, I began to see why. So I'm just going to talk about water pollution, a little bit about water pollution, because there's a ton of information on this website. In most of the countries in which garments are produced, untreated toxin wastewater for textile factories are dumped directly into the rivers. Wastewater contains toxic substances such as lead, mercury, and arsenic, as well as others. These are extremely harmful to the aquatic life and the health of millions of people by those riverbanks. The contamination also reaches the sea and eventually spreads around the globe. Another major source of water contamination is the use of fertilizers for cotton production, which heavily pollutes runoff waters and evaporation waters. What can we do about it? We can choose clothes manufactured in countries with strict environmental regulations for factories. Some of those are the EU, European Union, Canada, and the US. Because many of these countries that manufacture textiles do not have strict regulations, if they have any at all. Choose organic fibers and natural fibers that do not require chemicals to be produced. They also recommend washing new clothing to get rid of the many chemicals, as many of those chemicals before you wear them. I'm sure that you'll be hearing more about this subject from me because there was so much. If you're interested in finding out more, go to sustainyourstyle.org. Thank you.
Bill asked if I would share a little about what worship means to me as a way to enter into this sacred time together more fully. Well, I've given this a lot of thought, and my response is fairly simple. Like many of you, my sense of worship is activated through experiences in nature. Even if that is just feeling the breeze on my screened porch as I look out at the green of bushes and trees and leaves close by. It happens even if I'm just looking at a picture, like the picture of the lanternfly, which Joy showed us in the moment for Mother Earth the other week. Admittedly, these are fiends, these creatures, in the way they destroy trees, but they are breathtakingly beautiful. And I want to say also that we can move into a memory of a time when we've been in nature and we felt deeply moved or touched or peaceful or filled with joy, gratitude, wonder. And when we do that, when we take time to really enter into that memory and the physiology of that memory, all the sensory aspects of it, we will actually have an experience on the neurological level of being there. There's a lot of research behind this, so it's a good stress management technique, but it's also a way to enter worship when you feel claustrophobic, perhaps in your own home, or on a sort of gray, rainy day like this. We can take ourselves in our imagination to a place where that feeling of worship and peace was activated, perhaps in nature at some time in the past, or maybe having been at church together in the sanctuary or in some other cathedral somewhere. Our imagination is a beautiful thing when it comes to worship. Someone wrote a book about prayer, the title of which includes these three words. I forget the order, but wow, thanks, and help. Wow, thanks, and help. This is summarizing what worship is about for me. Wow, that sense of awesomeness of God and all that God has created, and just that we're even part of it ourselves. Thanks for all that is going well and for all that we know is happening behind the scenes to support us. And help. Of course, help is just help. So many things we want to bring to God. My intention for life is also summed up in these words from the gospel song, Day by Day, the Godspell song, which simply say, day by day, to see thee more clearly, to love thee more dearly, to follow thee more nearly, day by day, by day. That's my intention for life and for worship. And so I come to worship and into prayer to be refreshed and renewed in these intentions. I come to see and be with you as well, because where two or three are gathered, Scripture says, God is surely there. Jesus is there. And we know God is in the love and care we have for ourselves and for each other. So let us now gather ourselves in as God is gathering us in a moment of silence, and then Bill will lead us in the opening song.
in this place, the new light is streaming. Shadows of doubt are banished away. See in this space our fears and our dreamings. More dear to you in the light of this day. Gather us in, the lost and forsaken. Gather us in, our spirits inflame. Call to us now, and we shall awaken. We shall arise at the sound of our name. We are the young, our lives are a mystery. We are the old, who yearn for your face. We have been sung throughout all of history, called to be light in the whole human race. Gather us in, the rich and the haughty. Gather us in, the proud and the strong. Give us a heart so meek and so lowly. Give us the courage to enter the storm. Here we receive new life in the waters. Here we receive the bread of new birth. Here you shall call your sons and your daughters. Call us anew to be salt for the earth. Give us to drink the wine of compassion. Give us to eat the bread that is you. Nourish us well and teach us to fashion lives that are holy and hearts that are true. Not just in buildings small and confining, not in some heaven light years away. Here in this place the new light is shining. Now is God present and now is the day. Gather us in and hold us forever. Gather us in and make us your own. Gather us in, all peoples together. Fire of love in our flesh and our blood.
This morning has been a really good morning. I greatly appreciated that Nancy and Bill provided us a foundation of worship and why we are here. Then Sue and Lexi and Patricia, as they continue giving us the tech support so we can figure out how to do this. The music we had before everybody got here, the 3 songs in the background, very, very touching. I appreciate that. That helped me get into a mood for worship. So in looking at that, I want to share a story starting out this morning. It's a story that Rabbi David Wolpe presented a couple weeks ago. You may or may not know about David Wolpe. He has been called the most influential rabbi, or one of the most influential rabbis in not only the United States, but the world. I came across a story that he was sharing. It was something I want to share with you as well. It goes like this. When David's father, who was living in Boston, that's where he grew up, was 11 years old, his father died suddenly, unexpectedly. And this was a hard hit, as you could well imagine, to the family. It was only David's father, only child, and the mother. A Jewish tradition is that when you lose a family member, you enter into the Kaddish prayer, Kaddish, the mourning prayer, Mourning. And it's a time when you gather with at least 10 others in the Jewish community at the synagogue, and you enter into the ritual prayers. You do it together. You do it for comfort. You do it for healing. You do it to be together. When you lose a parent, the tradition is that you go for 11 months. It's a long time, but it takes that much time, they have decided, and it seems to help, to be together with community during this time of loss. and slowly coming back to life. David's father, 11 years old, was going to make this journey from his house to the synagogue almost every day. It was well over 2 miles. He would be walking that route by himself. On the first week, early in the week, Mr. Einstein, not the famous one, but one from the synagogue, was there waiting for him on the front porch, just waiting. David's father came out of the house and he was surprised. He recognized Mr. Einstein, but he wasn't that familiar with him. He politely asked what he was doing there. Mr. Einstein simply said that he just didn't feel it was right for David's father to make this journey alone. He would, if it was okay, take this journey with him to the synagogue every day. And, as he said, besides, it was on his way. This went on for almost 11 months. And day after day, Mr. Einstein would be waiting for David's father right there on the sidewalk, waiting patiently. They'd walk together the long path through the winters in Boston, bundled up in the hot, muggy summers. They walked. They healed each other in some ways. Many years later, David's father, as he married, and he had a first child, which would be David Wolp's older brother. They lived in California. And David's father decided one day that, let's go back to Boston to visit. The family have not met our newborn. And I'd like Mr. Einstein to meet our son. They went. They went to the synagogue, first off, just about. He walked in and he introduced himself. Then they said, oh, we know who you are. After those years, they knew who he was. And he asked about Mr. Einstein. Is he still around? I'd like to go visit him. They said, oh, yeah. Mr. Einstein is older. He's a little bit slower, but he's still around. Where does he live? Oh, in the same house he's always lived in. They gave him the address, the telephone number. David's father called him, asked, would it be okay to come by? I'd like to introduce you to somebody. Mr. Einstein, of course, said, oh, absolutely, come, please. So they got back in the car, this time driving, not walking, drove straight from the synagogue to David's father's old house, just to see, retracing the step, more for David's father than anybody else, but it was important. And then the GPS told them how to get to Mr. Einstein's house, and that was when David's father was surprised on two accounts. One is Mr. Einstein did not live anywhere close to David's father's house. It was a long distance, in fact. He didn't realize that. He just made the assumption that Mr. Einstein lived just around the corner. It was on his way, after all. And then the second thing he found out was that, oh, Mr. Einstein lives in the opposite direction. In fact, Mr. Einstein lived actually pretty close to the synagogue. It would have been a short little hop from his house to the synagogue, but instead Mr. Einstein would walk almost 3 miles to get to David's father's house, and then the other more than 2 miles to go with David, and then reverse it to come home every time. It was with this realization that the weight of this gift became apparent. That what Mr. Einstein had given to David's father was a gift of great meaning, of great magnitude. It made me wonder if Mr. Einstein, for example, though, all the time, understood the value and the power of a ripple. You know a ripple. You take a little rock or a stone or maybe something big, throw it in, heave it in a pool or a pond or a lake, and you see the big splash, and then you see the ripples. And the ripples kind of spread out. Sometimes they die quickly, sometimes they don't. But a ripple and the power that it has. Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, when he was a young senator in 1966, was asked to go down to Cape Town, South Africa, to give a speech. The speech would later be known as the Ripple of Hope speech. Let me share with you just a quick excerpt from this speech. Few have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can work to change a small portion of the events, and in the total of all these acts will be written the history of this generation. Remember, this is during the time of apartheid. It is a bad situation down there, and there was not much hope. He continued, and remember, this is 1966, so you'll catch the language. Each time a man stands up for an idea or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. These little ripples, as they gather strength, as they gather energy, as they combine with others, they make a difference. Kennedy said, even so much that they can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. These two stories made me think about the stories in my life. The stories of ripples, of where somebody somewhere had done something for me, with me. And now I look back often and realize what an impact it made. But back then, no, I don't know that I recognized it. I don't know that I really considered how much it was of an impact it was going to make on me. It just happened. And maybe continued to happen, but that's okay. It was just daily life. But now I look back, both in stories that affected me directly as well as stories that affected other people, and realize these ripples have power, even when we don't know it, even when we don't recognize it. And I have no doubt you have those same stories in mind. That you know of those times when somebody somewhere has done something with or for somebody, and what an impact it has made, maybe to you, maybe to others. And maybe think about stories in the Bible that have ripples indeed. Oh, sometimes there's the big splashy stories that catch the headlines. We know those. Those are easy to spot. But what about the stories that sometimes we don't catch? We don't see what was going on and what has happened as a result. I want to share one of those stories. I think you actually know it. It's a story about the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper, communion, the Eucharist. It's a tradition that we honor and observe in our church weekly. Many other churches do, at least on a periodic basis. Do you remember the story, though, what happened? This happens during what we're told, it was a week-long festival of the unleavened bread. The Jews, the Hebrews from all over would come into Jerusalem. It was a time to remember, to honor, if you will, the Exodus. It started out typically with a Passover meal. It was a time of celebration. It was a time of humbling experiences. But it was also a time filled with anxiety. You see, they were going to Jerusalem. The Romans were there in force. There was pretty much an unwritten agreement at this point between the Roman authorities and the Hebrews, the Jews, that if you behave, the Romans would say to the Jews, if you behave, if you honor Caesar, if you don't get in our way, if you don't challenge us, if you behave, we'll let you alone. We won't bother you. And that was pretty much the case. But still, there were all the Roman sentries armed and probably itching for a fight, probably just looking at everybody. And it's into this arena that Jesus brings his followers. Oh, they didn't enter silently. They didn't enter quietly. It's a dangerous time. And here they are. So they've already started becoming noticed. They've already started becoming a problem. And so there's no doubt that his followers are wondering what is going to happen. So we're told they go to an upper room. That makes sense. Get off the street, get out of the noise, get out of everybody's way. If it was done for a Passover meal, that would require certain cleaning and a special way to do it. But we don't know if that's the case necessarily. But there they were, and paying complete attention to what Jesus said. I don't think so. I really don't. Now, I based this a little bit on what I experienced once. I think I've shared this when I went to a mission trip down to Nicaragua. And that was during a time of political unrest. As soon as we got off the airplane, we were greeted by our host and the soldiers, heavily armed. The host told us fairly quickly, you'll be fine. Just don't challenge them. Don't confront them. Don't do anything to irritate them. Just stay in your lane. In fact, ignore them. We got in our pickup truck, 11 of us, kind of huddled down in the back, bouncing around. And you couldn't miss the truck full of soldiers, heavily armed, staring at us. Just waiting, it seemed like, for us to make a difference. Well, just put it out of your mind. No, you don't. It was real. And I think the followers of Jesus, as they were in that room, that was still very much in their mind. What is going to happen to us? But then Jesus starts their shared meal. And just as a host would do, he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He blesses the food and shares it. That would have been his role. That's what they would have expected. So Jesus takes the bread, we're told, and he has some words. Here's the bread. He blesses it, he breaks it, he shares it with each one, says to them, take, eat. This is my body. Do this in remembrance of me. I don't know that they caught that. They would have understood, yes, here's the bread, let's share it, let's eat it. But those extra words, this is my body. Do this in remembrance of me. You see, they've already started talking about who's going to betray Jesus. They're looking around, is it you? Is it, I'm not, who is it? They already have the Roman soldiers on their mind. And you know what I don't find in the Bible, in this story? That anybody, Peter jumps up, for example, and says, Jesus, you just threw in something really interesting here. I think churches are going to talk about this for the next 2,000 years. Tell us exactly what you mean. Exactly. What's your theological concepts between this is your body and we are supposed to eat it? Symbolically? Physically? What do you mean? I don't see anywhere that there was a discussion about what that meant, or if it was even said. Maybe a couple of them nudged each other and noticed, did you hear that? That seems unusual. But they passed the bread and went on. Jesus then takes the cup. And wine in this case, again, what they would have. And he blesses it and he shares it and he tells them to drink of it, all of you. Okay. Nothing new. For this is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for all. Again, I don't notice any nudging. I don't notice, maybe this time, who knows, Andrew stands up and says, Jesus, could you back up a little bit? Could you tell us exactly what that means? Because, there's this church, United Christian Church in Levittown, Pennsylvania, that they're going to be asking questions about this 2,000 years from now and want to know what this means. We need to tell them. No. I didn't see any indication that there was anything that caught their attention. They had their meal, they had their song, and they left. Ripples. That meager beginning has become the foundation for Christians all over the world. But it's a tradition. And yet it's much more than a tradition. You see, it has impact. It has become that symbol. It has become that experience where we gather together at this Lord's table. And the table doesn't really matter. It could be any place because it's really not a time or a place. It's an attitude. It's a way of seeing life that was created in that room. Take, eat. This is my body. This is our body. Jesus, just like Mr. Einstein, was telling them, I'm going to take this walk with you. Oh yeah, there will be a time when you'll be on your own, but I will not leave you. I will come by. I'll be standing on the front porch. I'll be standing on the sidewalk. And you and I will take this walk together. You and I won't make you have to go through this alone. No, I'll be there. I'll be there. Take, eat. This is our body. Each one of us shares it with each other. And drink of this cup, all of you. For this is a new covenant. You see, all of you was a new covenant because usually it was selected fews, just those who seemed to fit in. There would be a big debate, of course, later in the church about, are these pagans supposed to be allowed into the church? As they became the Christian church, all of us, all of you, would be welcomed at this table. That was a change, a big change. We carry that lifestyle, we carry that attitude on today, do we not? That this table is open, it's welcome to those. We don't pick and choose. We say, come be with us. Come. Share in this bread, share in this cup, share in this life. The power that has happened in knowing that we have this place, this attitude that says all are welcome. And we mean it. We mean it, don't we? That's a powerful statement, especially in today's world. All are welcome. And we're taking this journey together. It's not just a tradition. It's not just a ritual. It's a proclamation. It's an affirmation that started in an upper room someplace as just a ripple. And maybe some of the disciples caught on. And maybe they thought, ooh, that would be nice. Maybe there was some hope that was being generated. That would be good, wouldn't it? Maybe that could happen. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait. Maybe not, but that ripple, that stone had been dropped into the water and the ripples were starting. And this current was building, a current so strong that it could sweep down and has swept down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance where we proclaim all are welcome. And we take this journey together. We walk with each other. Well, this is quite a story, as it turns out, as far as I'm concerned. It's quite an impactful look at life, our lives. And because of that, we're going to kind of change directions a little bit now, because I want to invite us to experience communion this Sunday, maybe in a little different way. I have my elements here, the cup and the loaf, and you may too, but I'm going to ask you that we're not going to partake it right now together, because this is what I invite you to do. I invite you to honor the ripples in your life. First, take, if you will, the loaf, sometime, someplace. Take some time. Don't rush through this, so I'm asking you to take some time. And in memory of the ripples of hope, in memory of what this table means, I invite you to think about, who is it that has walked with you? Who is it who has met you, maybe in times when you needed comfort? Maybe when you needed encouragement? Maybe when you needed to be challenged? Maybe somebody who you were lonely and you just needed a presence of somebody, and they showed up and they walked with you. Maybe just one time, but it was a very important time. Or maybe that's been a long journey and they are still walking with you. If not physically, at least spiritually, or at least in your heart, at least in your mind. Could be parents, could be a teacher, could be a peer, could be a child, could be, who is it? Take this loaf, and share it with them as you gather with them at the table with Jesus, as he says, take, eat, this is our body. Do this in remembrance of us, because this journey we take together is so important. Let us remember it. And then I invite you to take the cup of the new covenant. And I want you to flip it a little bit, and I want you to say, now, who is it that I have walked with? Who is it that I have comforted? Who is it that I have encouraged? Who is it that I have challenged at a time in their life when they needed somebody to be there with them? Oh, I know. You're already thinking, well, I can't think of anybody. Not me. No. Think harder. I truly invite you to think about whose lives you have impacted, because you have, and you know it. Again, it may be somebody from the past. And when you did this, you gave this ripple of hope, and you might not have thought it was anything special, just something. And now you look back and you realize, yeah, that made a difference. So take this cup and remember those past or present, or maybe even future, of who is it that you have touched. And invite them to the table as well, and invite them to be on this celebration of thankfulness and affirming community and caring and comfort and hope. This is going to be a little bit different, maybe a little bit longer communion than you're used to, so give yourself some time. It's worth it. Because these ripples of hope, especially as it creates this, what we call the Lord's Supper, it's much more than a tradition. It's an attitude. It's a way of life. It's who we are. I invite you to celebrate this, to honor it. For we, each one of us, we are a ripple of hope. Amen. And let us now hear Bill Bloom lead us in the song, We Are One.
We are one as we come joyful to be in the praise on our lips. There's a sense that God is near. We are one as we sing, we are one. And we come full of God's grace as we meet together in this place. We are one as we share brokenness and fear in the touch of a hand. There's a sense that God is here. We are one as we care, as we heal, we are healed, and we share warmth in God's embrace as we pray together in this place. We are one as we feast, peace becomes the sign in the bread and the wine. There's a sense of love divine. We are one as we come, as we feed, we are fed, and we feel God's refreshing grace as we meet at table in this place. We are one as we hear, heart and hand unite. In the word we receive, there's a sense that God is light. We are one as we lead, as we love, we are loved, and we seek justice in God's place as we move together from this place.
We are one. We are ripples. We are part of what will make a mighty current that can bring down oppression and injustice. We are traveling together. We are partners in this walk. Thanks be to God. Amen. And now stay with us for coffee hour.